Feudalism is making a comeback, but how will this modern form of neo-feudalism look, and how will it be implemented? In medieval times, feudalism was the dominant social system in Europe. Society was rigidly divided into classes based on birth. At the top were nobles and clergy, who owned most of the land and resources.
Between the 9th and 15th centuries, Europe feudalism was the dominant social system. The nobility amassed private armies to take land from each other. They quickly realized that they could enrich themselves much easier by running a protection scheme on the common man to hand over control of their family lands. The scam worked by offering protection from foreign warlords in exchange for handing over held lands to the crown. In exchange for military service, independent landowners were in turn tenants of the nobles, peasants, villains, serfs, and servants. Debt slaves were obliged to live on their lord's land and give him homage, labor, and a share of all crops and spoils from the land. Feudalism lasted until the Great Migration of Europeans to the Americas between 1492 and the 1800s. Approximately 2.6 million Europeans were happy to flee feudalism, many of them as indentured servants for the opportunity to become free landowners once again.
Now in modern times, society is rigidly divided into elites and regular people, where power and wealth are concentrated in the hands of the 1% at the top. Homeownership, once an accessible dream, is now out of reach for most people, and debt chains them to their landlords the same as it did centuries ago.
Quiet thoughts. Be sure to like and subscribe for another exciting episode.
In feudalistic times, opportunities in life was dictated not by merit, but by the circumstances of your birth. Modern economic factors are now making success difficult to achieve based on hard work once again. As economic inequality expands, a neo-feudalistic dystopian future edges closer to reality. The World Economic Forum has planned for us all to own nothing and be happy with it. Meanwhile, America is being turned into a nation of renters. Hedge funds and corporations are betting on homeownership declining for many years to come, so they are buying up millions of houses, but not to sell them or live in them. They plan to charge sky-high rents for you all to rent from them, since buying your own home will soon be unrealistic.
Average house prices in Dublin, €509,000. You'd need a salary of €150,000 a year in order to get a mortgage on a property like that. And your affordable housing schemes are linked to a discount on that absolutely obscene price. In my area, average house prices €700,000. So a whole future generation of young people, working people, will never be able to own their own home and will be prey to the obscene rents that are being charged of €2,000 and €2,200. Never able to save, never able to aspire to own their own home, and you have failed them completely, and you won't even give them eligibility for social housing support. It's obscene.
So rents are skyrocketing, and the lack of affordable homes is getting worse because large inventories of homes are being held by investment funds. The history of feudalism shows us that below the nobles and clergy were knights who were given lordships over lots of land by nobles in exchange for military service. At the bottom of society were serfs or commoners who were tied to the land and forced to work for the landlords in exchange for protection. Why do you think people were in such a rush to leave Europe and rush to the New World in America for a chance to actually own land? Don't forget the fact that lands were being taken from the Aboriginal people of America, but that's a different story altogether. In neo-feudalism, you may not work for your landlord directly, but if you have to use most of your earnings for rent, then the results are the same. While 21st century society is vastly different, some troubling parallels are emerging that point to a neo-feudalistic model. Power and wealth are increasingly concentrated among a small elite class, while the working class struggles. Funding cuts to social programs and the ridiculously high cost of college education further divide society between haves and have-nots. A major driver of neo-feudalism is the decline in home ownership. After World War II, home ownership rate increased, maxing out at around 70%. For decades, the United States was roughly a 65% homeowner to 35% renter country. Home prices have skyrocketed since 2020 interest rates have gone up, making homeownership out of reach for more Americans. With no choice, they are forced into rental housing controlled by corporate landlords. Unlike medieval commoners, today's renters are not tied to the land, but still lack the security and equity of homeownership. Since real estate accounts for large portions of the net worth of wealthy people, renters do not benefit from the increasing value of real estate over time. America is becoming a nation of renters without a stake in their community. Homeownership is out of reach for so many people. Corporate think tanks say homeownership rates will continue to drop for most age groups through 2040. The investment funds are betting that the market for renters will grow at more than double the pace of homeownership growth from 2020 through 2040. Basically, when the World Economic Forum and Wall Street bankers decide that a thing is going to happen, they're going to do everything in their power to make sure it happens. And these people have a lot of power. They want to usher in this new age of neo-feudalism fueled by inflation and concentrated land ownership. And they're going to make sure it happens. So be ready.
I heard a new term on TikTok today that made me stop in my tracks.
We are living in the silent depression.
This guy believes we are not just living in worse than the Great Depression, we're living in the silent depression. The average annual income in 1930 for an American individual was a little over $4,800. Sounds like nothing, but if you adjust that for inflation, a little over $4,800 a year in 1930 is equivalent to almost $85,000 annually for the average salary for one person. Right now, the average annual salary is $56,000 a year. We currently are making less than the height of the Great Depression. In 1930, gas was on average 10 cents a gallon. That would be about $1.73. In case you haven't filled up your car lately, average cost of a gallon of gas is $3.55. To buy a new car in 1930 would have been about $860. It's worth about 15 grand. The average cost of a new car today is $48,000. And of course, the most coveted aspect of the American dream, being able to buy a house in 1930 cost about $3,900, less than $70,000. I spend way too much time on Zillow, so maybe this isn't surprising to me, but the average price of a home in America today is $416,000. How could we be living through worst cost of living and wages than 1930? And no politician, no media outlet, no one is talking about it.
That's Bidenomics. It's about growing an economy by strengthening the middle class.
Inflation is up. In fact, it's way up. Gas prices, electricity, airline fares, and even eggs are at least a third more expensive than just a few years ago. Even the dinner you eat at your favorite restaurant costs significantly more today than it did a year ago. Inflation is at a 41-year high, and consumers are paying more for everything. Our discretionary funds are drying up, and we're all having to make tough choices as to how we spend our dwindling dollars. And last I checked, for each euro, we only get 91 cents. This inflation fuels debt, and debt makes it very difficult for families to save and build wealth. A contrast, the assets of billionaires or modern-day nobles ballooned. In 2021 alone, the 10 richest men doubled their wealth, furthering the neo-feudalistic dystopia. In the feudal model, your opportunities in life were dictated by the circumstances of your birth, while modern society aims for greater mobility. Funding cuts disproportionately impact working-class families, cementing class advantages, with education being the primary driver of upward mobility. Cuts to public universities, paired with ridiculously high tuition rates, saddles generations with debt. See a trend here. Regular people are being saddled with all the debt, while rich people keep getting richer. If that's not an indication of neo-feudalism, then tell me what is. While modern society has made progress, widening inequality points to an emerging neo-feudalistic dystopia. However, advancing technology may alter this course. The rise of artificial intelligence and automation is expected to displace many traditional jobs. With less need for human labor, universal basic income proposals gain traction. Some hypothesize that guaranteed income could break the chains of wage slavery and debtor bondage to employers and creditors. Freed from these bindings, and with basic needs met, regular citizens may better participate in civil society and democratic governance. With less desperation comes less exploitation. But I'm sure the modern-day nobles won't want the peasants to raise up and become more influential. Automation and AI could also further concentrate power and wealth, reducing many to a subsistence existence under corporate feudal lords. Universal basic income alone is no magic magic bullet, especially if universal basic income is tied to requirements like invasive tracking implants that surrender privacy and human autonomy to central authorities. Then, a neo-feudalistic future could happen even quicker. So, before it becomes impossible, get some land, buy a house, learn to garden and gain some autonomy and self-sufficiency.
Quiet thoughts. Be sure to like and subscribe.